Hello and welcome to Unplugged, an IoT podcast, where we delve into the fascinating world of industrial Internet of Things and automation. I'm your host, Phil Saboa.
G'day, Phil, and hello, everyone. My name is Ed Fuentes. Well, Phil, we're really digging into some interesting episodes in the last few weeks, and actually probably from the beginning. And it's always interesting to talk to people from different parts of the scope, from those integrating solutions to those building out software products. And today we have talking to someone around the IoT or IoT device creation, and quite interesting, actually. Looking forward to this discussion with Alex Sims, our very special guest. So, Alex, thanks very much for joining us today.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and Alex, by his LinkedIn profile, is technically creative, which I love. As a tagline, a solution-focused professional who brings a rare combination of hands-on experience and deep technical expertise. From his early days as an electrician and a data technician to his current role as technical support lead at Caliper. Alex has been at the front lines of digitizing industry with IoT, whether it's protecting bat colonies and with climate sensors, or helping out local councils with smarter infrastructure. Alex helps turn complex technology into relatable real-world solutions. If you're a tradie curious about tech, or love a good barbecue radar demo, this is the episode for you. So welcome, Alex.
That all sounds really good. Thank you.
That's come straight out of our PR team, that one.
Yeah. No, that sounds about right though.
Yeah. So, Alex, you started your career as a qualified electrician. Maybe you can give us a bit of a walkthrough about your journey and how you got into IoT and automation.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, being an electrician feels like a very long time ago now, but it's not that long ago. But yeah, basically, I left high school. I thought I wanted to be a teacher and did a few months of uni and decided actually I didn't. And then from there, I kind of just filled time for a year and worked at a Thai restaurant, did a whole bunch of bits and pieces, and had some mates that were looking at trades and already in trades. And kind of that was a bit of my circle at the time. So I got interested in that. And by the end of the year, I was doing my kind of entrance course to become an electrician and start my apprenticeship. And got into it mainly because I was really interested in doing something hands on. I kind of realized that a few months in the books wasn't really the path I wanted to go down at that time. So doing something a bit more practical made a bit more sense for me. And I guess through high school as well, I spent a lot of time focusing on kind of those creative industries subjects and building things and designing things. It kind of felt like a natural pathway. So I did that. I did my apprenticeship here in Brisbane. I worked for a labour hire agency, which kind of gave me some exposure across the industry from industrial to domestic, and spent some time in commercial, which maybe led to kind of how I'm in my position today. But it really exposed me to a lot of different tradespeople who they themselves have had a lot of different pathways to becoming tradespeople and had lived many lives by the time that I'd met them. And so kind of lots of interesting stories and experiences. And part of doing my trade was working alongside a whole bunch of people that were probably towards the end of their careers and coasting, being paid exactly the same as I was, doing the exact same jobs and tired and sore with muscle joint problems. And I vowed at that point as like a 22-year-old never to be in the trades when I was that old, because it just takes such a huge toll on your body. So I was kind of trying to figure out what pathway I wanted to take beyond my trade because I knew it was not something I wanted to do long term. And I guess that was a slow journey. So I finished my apprenticeship and then I moved up to Mackay to follow my partner for work. And when I was up there, I started working in a cafe when there was no work. But then I was working for a business doing like communication cabling, so working on hospital programs and things like that. And part of that work was deploying wireless access points in schools. And so not just throwing them on the ceiling, but it was also using like a demo version of a surveying tool. And we would basically use a whole bunch of different email accounts to sign up for demos for the next 14 days or whatever, and go and survey the school block that we're in, and basically evaluate exactly where we should position the access point, how long the cable runs needed to be, run that cable back to the rack. And that was really interesting. I found that quite exciting. And when I was moving back to Brisbane, I literally just started Googling that program, businesses who use that program, wireless surveying, and anything that I could kind of see as an opportunity back here in Brisbane, which led me to one company just coming up time and time again. And obviously, their LinkedIn advertising was working, which led me to calling them. And I basically just cold called them and asked for a catch up with the owner. Uh, but fortunately for me, the person who answered the phone was like an 18-year-old, like high school, just finished. They were doing their engineering degree. And I said, "Hey, I just wanted to speak to the owner if they're around." And he said, "Oh, he's not in, but do you have his mobile number?" I said, "No." So he gave me his number. I called and kind of explained who I was, and got a lot of pushback saying, "Hey, like, we're route switch, we're design, we're not deployment. Like, we don't need electricians." It's like, no, 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 no. I don't want to be an electrician. Like, I want to start from like grassroots. I want to work my way up and I guess figure it out on the job. And he agreed to a coffee, and that kind of gave me a start. And I guess what led from there was working with them for 3 years. And the work there was really around wireless design and wireless surveying, but also kind of Cisco route switch, CCNA type stuff. Again, bored me to tears, having to study again, but it was part of that job, I guess. But yeah, that really kind of steered me down a path of using my trade background to provide kind of insights into that business, and maybe a bit more practical understanding of, okay, we're designing it here and here, but there's actually going to be structural issues with that. We have to speak to engineers about installing access points in these locations. And so there was a bit of a blending there of my experience and what I was learning. And I guess out of the blue, the same friend who got me my start into a trade all those years ago gave me a call from what is now Caliper, and said, "Hey, mate, like, we're looking for a support engineer to come on board. I think you've got a good mix of skills. Do you want to have a crack here?" And so that was 4 years ago. I got my start with Caliper doing, I guess, just basic support work, which very quickly wasn't so basic. And again, just learning on the job about what IoT is, what it means to be a manufacturer of a product here in Australia, what it kind of entails to build solutions end to end, and again, kind of blending that, I guess, ability to understand, I guess, problems and how you would then go and solve them practically. So time and time again, being a tradie in my past life has actually been so beneficial and useful, and bizarrely has been a really good pathway to be doing the job I am now. But like nothing you can script or write. It's kind of ebbed and flowed, and I've just built up all these different, I guess, repertoires and banks of knowledge that all seemingly seem to come out and be useful at some point in doing what I'm doing now. So uh, I guess that's the long version of how I'm here and my experience.
I can definitely, understand that, like, it's a very similar pathway to how I've got into the industry. I was an electrician. I went in on the tools, kinda decided that wasn't really for me, so just kind of went into sales, more sales orientated, but that context of being on the tools, being in the environments, being on the plant floor, being, out in the, trenches and kind of working systems out is really what gives you, a standing to be able to talk to these applications that
Yeah.
customers are facing every day. So that's a really interesting point.
Yeah, and I'm also fascinated by how you wanted to be a teacher at the beginning. So, you know, that whole idea that you maybe wanted to share or were comfortable maybe potentially making complex technology, making it simple, or complex jargon, making it simple, or trying to transfer knowledge. I think that's quite interesting that you had that as a basis to your knowledge. And also teaching as a continual learning process. So I just imagine that appetite you had for learning was quite amazing, and I think like Phil mentioned that mixed skill that you garnished. Life's incredible how it takes us through journeys. And I imagine now where you are, I'd be interested to know, when did you first hear about IoT or IIoT? When did that happen for you?
When my mate called me. Yeah, honestly, I didn't know anything about IoT or IoT other than kind of the stuff you pick up off the shelf at Bunnings, like a weather station that calls into your mobile device, or like little Raspberry Pi applications and people doing little test labs at home with temperature sensors. And at that time, I yeah, kind of had zero exposure.
Or so you've gone through the process of now knowing and being obviously in a company who provides quite a good list of IoT solutions, and so you must work closely with installers and customers, trying to, like you said, understand the problem, which could sound complex, but I'm sure somehow simplify it to a degree. So, what are the common challenges you find with tradespeople when they want to start learning about IoT? How do you help them overcome, I suppose, what could sound to be complex? How do you make it not complex?
Yeah, it is. It's an interesting, I guess, proposition because it's bread and butter of this industry, and I think yeah, it's so easy to jump so quickly to how deeply technical these devices or solutions might be, but ultimately they're all going to fail if they're not installed properly, and they're all going to fail if they haven't been set up or configured correctly based on the environmental conditions. So everything needs to be digestible to the point at which any installer, any utility has enough kind of scope and bandwidth in their typical workforce to go and deploy these things successfully. So yeah, I mean, how,
Because it's, where I say, oh, because it sounds so straightforward, or just use IIoT, it solves your problems. But that's such a generic statement.
yeah, and I think that's part of the problem. So, I mean, for me, when I started, I knew nothing about IoT, right? I understood that it was a device that you go and deploy in the field. It takes sensor readings and those come back somehow. And I think unlike any other domain, like, if we're talking about setting up a network stack, you've got routers, you've got firewalls, you've got switches. Each of those individual hardware components has so much information online and so many people that profess to be experts on that one thing. So if you ever have any issues with any of that kind of equipment, you can very quickly navigate anywhere via, Google or whatever it might be, to find an answer. And I think what's interesting about IoT is that it's so broad and it's all of those things bundled into one. Uh, and so it's so easy to find yourself lost in all of that. So I think breaking it down for tradespeople, it's really about removing all of that noise and removing all of the stress and complexity that should be managed by kind of operational leads or the people actually implementing it into the business, and just highlighting the bits that are relevant to the particular working group. So like a tradesperson installing a radar doesn't need to understand the payload structure that's being sent over the network and the API that's taking it into a backend. They don't need to know any of that. They just need to know the 3 steps that help them nail the bit that they're accountable for. And it's really trying to segment that useful information to the right stakeholders going and doing those jobs, like those kind of network stacks where you have all these different bits and pieces, and you really need, you know, a deep understanding of each of those components. And yeah, I think IoT is just so deep and wide that you have to simplify it to be successful. And there's kind of that's the option.
Yeah, you're right. It's almost like plug and play now. And I've got a few ring sensors around my house. I literally kept point it to the router, and bang, it works.
Yeah,
It's
it's awesome, right?
all that back end is just managed, right, by the supplier. Or I suppose that's the challenges of being a manufacturer as Caliper, creating that back end that takes away the things you don't need to know.
Yeah, yeah, and honestly, like, I've been in the industry now for a few years, and one of the coolest things was actually buying a robot vacuum the other week, and seeing the user experience start to finish and how dialed that is now, and how quickly it was to set up on my home network, and just it mapped my house, it knew where it was. If you drop it in space, it just figures it out from cameras, and also it's so cool. Uh, and honestly, that would be kind of my yardstick for installers. I'm like, "Hey, guys, like, go and get yourselves like a weather station for your house, or like a something that's integrated with technology." And it's not so much about having to understand how each of those little components and sensors works, but it's just that bringing the whole piece together, and I guess really simplifying that concept of just deploying technology in space and getting that information back and using it for the greater good, I guess. Yeah, it's finding stuff exciting, which is cool.
Yeah, one of those big challenges of IoT and IoT is scale. And so if you're focusing on the installer's user experience, to do that installation process, which they're probably gonna end up doing hundreds of times potentially, you need to make it really quick, efficient, understandable by most tradesmen, try and make that barrier to entry really easy. So I can totally understand, like, from a design manufacturer point of view, to try and do your due diligence, make sure that all your documentation is legible, basically,
I'd like to
and
think it's
yeah.
better than legible, but yes. Yeah, legible.
But it's almost in the field that documentation is the last thing you look at. You should turn it on, point to the have a UI or some sort of connectivity, and away it goes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
documentation
exactly.
is coming into troubleshooting
Yeah,
territory,
that's right.
at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah, which I found myself in many a times building an IKEA cabinet. I go, "Oh, that drawer doesn't look right." I'll pull the instructions out. Yeah.
We've seen, I guess, a few of your LinkedIn posts, more recently. Maybe you can share some of your experiences that you've been able to, I guess, use in the, or do experience in the industry at this point.
Yeah, yeah, sure. I mean, it's interesting when I started when I started at Caliper, I had this kind of imposter syndrome for years. I thought I was not that deep on any particular subject. I was just thrown into a whole bunch of different things and had my fingers in lots of pies all at once. And I was like, man, like I don't know where I am in this business. Like I feel like I'm just so out of my depth everywhere. And then you do that for long enough, and then you realize you're actually quite good at doing lots of different things. And so a mentor of mine kind of highlighted, "Hey, this is actually like to your advantage. Like being a generalist is a good thing, and it's unique to have a generalist in a business." But yeah, part of being in that generalist sort of role means that I'm also doing a bit of marketing in my job. So I do like a lot of technical aspects and working with customers to support those deployments and installers, helping them understand how our equipment actually goes in the ground. But yeah, I kind of have that unique position of also being able to zoom way out and actually kind of explore those experiences, and kind of provide those trainings and insights via our LinkedIn or via our YouTube, doing kind of marketing content, which has been really fun. Part of what we're doing is kind of like lab stuff and trying to break down stuff, just technical jargon that's in our industry, and try and make it accessible for people who have just graduated uni and landed themselves in a cool job in a big utility or council, whatever it might be. And then they turn around and go, "Oh my God, like I don't understand any of this." So that's kind of what I'm trying to do, is to simplify what we're doing, and like I touched on before, kind of break down some of those concepts in those little segments of IoT and what it all means. And I guess part of that means that I'm actually going out onto site and working with the installers directly, wherever that may be, to, I guess, A, provide on-site training and support for kind of nailing those day one installs and making sure that all the touch and feel points of using our product are really good, and try and answer any of those questions that might be left um, wanting while I'm on site with the businesses. And I guess creating content along those journeys has been quite interesting as well, because it helps me to kind of zoom out and highlight, hey, there's some really important questions here that I kind of just know, but these utilities don't know. And I guess documenting that experience and answering why we're actually doing something or how it actually works is probably answering a lot of questions for a lot of people around the industry. Um, One of the things that I didn't foresee, and you touched on in your intro, was that a month or two ago, I was working with the city of Moreton Bay, deploying out solutions to help support bat colonies. Um, I guess the crux of it is that we've got a temperature sensor connected to our device, which, when it sees high temperature events, it'll alarm and send that data back into a platform and then alert all the users that, hey, the temperature is really high in these locations. And what that'll actually trigger is a wildlife crew will then go and attend site and go and observe these bat colonies. And what will happen is that in these heat wave events, they'll actually come down from the trees, hug the tree trunks, or lay flat on the ground to try and cool themselves down. And then they're at risk of predators and kind of conflict with humans and all sorts. So, what these wildlife teams then go and do is help provide support to these animals to ensure that they can cool down, or go and take them to a clinic if they need further help. But that is so far from what I would ever imagine our devices would be doing. So, I think that one certainly highlights, I guess, what we can do with our products. But I think just technology in general, like, it's providing data where you previously either didn't have any data, or you're guessing based on poor data, and providing really high fidelity information of things that are important to you when it's important to you. One of our key use cases, and what we are doing a lot of at the moment, both here in Australia, but then globally as well, is deploying our integrated radar. And ultimately, it's just a level monitoring device, but the outcome of deploying that across a network means that you can limit overflows and spillages into natural, I guess, estuaries and waterways, which is, a good thing. It's helping prevent kind of contamination, but it also affects wildlife populations, fauna. It affects kind of all of the users of that natural area, like down in Geelong. As I was filming and installing these radars, there was people rowing and kayaking and running along that river, which, without protection and proper monitoring, could be at risk of those overflow and flood events where you've got sewage then entering those systems. So it's not only kind of informational, but it's really driving businesses to do something different and something helpful with that information, and kind of drive not only insights, but then actions to go and fix problems as they're happening in real time. Kind of 2:30 in the morning, there's a spill about to occur. That team is notified and they're able to go to site and actually fix that issue before it becomes a real problem. And so that's the cool part of what we're doing, is that we're actually using the technology and using unique solutions and bundling a package. So like you said earlier, Ed, it is just plug and play to actually solve these really big complex problems.
Yeah. That because, when I think of IoT, and I maybe feels the same, as I always think about an industrial or manufacturing solution where you're monitoring level and temperature, like you mentioned, and, thinking of a temperature sensor to monitor when bats are around. It's data being some sort of different information for somebody else. And through this process, Alex, because I maybe I'm wrong here, but I imagine these customers aren't your typical IoT. Maybe they are, but when they employ or deploy such technologies, what do they need at their end as opposed to integrated? Because most manufacturing and most business, we know they have some sort of technical skill set. Or maybe I'm assuming they don't, but do they have, or how does that work? How does that then, they've got your technology, they're putting it in, how do then they integrate into their business?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think, I mean, customers are so wide and varied, and you get so many different mixes of how mature they are with this kind of technology. But I really believe that there's kind of two buckets of customers. You've either got customers that have deployed SCADA systems or really big, expensive equipment, and they've got the cloud infrastructure set up, and they've got engineers in house supporting these deployments and understand this technology really, really well. And then you've got customers that have a really specific problem that they don't know how to solve, and they're googling frantically to try and understand how they solve it with technology. As in, a technology company pops up and they start investigating and they go down a bit of a rabbit hole. And with the former, it's really about understanding their systems, understanding what's already been deployed, understanding why they're trying to solve their problem in a different way. So, speaking to those legacy SCADA systems, if I'm a utility and I've got a whole bunch of power and fiber run out to different nodes around my physical network, but then there's 20% of my network which is unmonitored because it doesn't have power or fiber, then I'm going to try and solve that problem in a new way. And that's where I guess we come into the picture. And so really then our role is to provide that continuity of data. So kind of give them what they're looking for from their existing systems in our new system. But then to integrate that into their existing cloud infrastructure. So ensuring that the software we're developing and providing into market is capable of being a standalone for those kind of customers that don't need anything else. They just need a platform to view the data. Uh, but also then having all the back-end smarts and the security infrastructure in place and everything else that we're going to need to do to either integrate that directly into their existing infrastructure or do it in the back end and provide kind of a seamless flow of data from our solutions, skip past our software and dump it directly where all the data already goes. But ensuring that we can still kind of configure and manage our devices with the tools that we built. But providing that kind of seamless flow of data, because if I was a customer, I'd be so annoyed if every single time I bought a piece of new technology, I couldn't integrate it, which is what we've seen a lot of, is kind of that death by dashboard, and you buy a new thing and it's a new app, and it's same on kind of that, large scale infrastructure architecture. It just becomes a huge headache. So, certainly, Ed, we're trying to ensure that everything that we're doing can be integrated with the customer and what their existing maturity is with whatever technology they've already adopted, whether that be none or heaps.
So I guess on that point, are you leveraging open protocols? How are you like managing that risk for your customers?
Yeah, so we are. Yep, basically we are. So with our own platform and the device, it's speaking over MQTT, which is open source and easy to understand. So we've had a lot of customers in the past build their own brokers and ingest that data directly for their use case. A lot of what's out there in the market now already has that kind of pre-baked into it. Um, our biggest concern is how those devices are managed correctly, how those health reports are coming through, and how those are configured with the really unique tools and programming that's, I guess, incumbent with our products and what we do. So we try and ensure that customers are leveraging the tools that we built for those things, which means that we've kind of made sure that that can stay with us, and then any data that needs to be streamed directly to those endpoints is easily accessible from the device, and kind of exactly how we built it for that reason.
You make an interesting point, Phil and Alex, here around that openness and the open protocols that's important to integrate into people's systems or wherever they want. There's lots of IoT manufacturers out there, Alice, and I'm sure you're aware of competitors of different places. And there are a lot of our, I suppose, listeners and users who are probably in the search for an IoT sensor or some sort of solution. So what are 2 or 3 or 4 things they should be mindful of when they're selecting a supplier IoT? What are the good points they should be thinking about in engaging a manufacturer?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of things, right? I think depending on your use case, you're gonna need different levels of computing power and different, levels of accuracy and timing. So there's use cases that, will demand really high frequency, really high fidelity data in those industrial environments where you've got conveyor belts running, you've got pumps and machines and millions of dollars of stock sitting in bays waiting to be dumped out if there's an alarm going off. I think just generally, that's probably not a great application for IoT, and that's where you have those fixed systems with fiber and you relatively no delay and really accurate streams of data in those applications. I think when you're evaluating your use case and looking at IoT to be deployed, it's really starting there. It's kind of understanding what your requirements are as a business. It's understanding that, you know, we can leverage a battery powered device, which is waking up, you know, 100 times a day and sending all that information back once a day or just when I need it, rather than needing mission critical data every couple of milliseconds. Two very different products. And so I think understanding your use case and what you need as business is really important right at the start of the piece. But then when you are looking at kind of IoT devices, it's really about that long-term scalability and deployability of those solutions, because you're not buying 10 devices for a trial to then never use devices again. You're probably looking at 200, 500, 2,000, 10,000 devices. And so you're really ensuring that the products that you're purchasing are going to be fit for purpose at that scale. And I think for me, that means that there's a good support system in place, that you've got all the, I guess, cloud redundancy in place and you know where your servers are hosted. It means that there's a support team you can call. It means that there's training available. It means that the hardware itself has passed through kind of rigorous testing, and that even though it's probably an edge case and you'll never see a flood that goes to this high, you want to ensure that the hardware you're purchasing is capable of withstanding those really extreme environmental conditions. You want to ensure that it stacks up for your business case. If you're trying to solve a problem that's costing you $1 million a year, you're going to want to ensure that your outlay meets that business case and makes sense 5 and 10 years down the track. So if you're purchasing a really cheap piece of hardware because it's going to solve your problem quickly for the next 2 months, well, that's great. But if you're going to have to keep rebuying that same piece of hardware 10 times throughout the deployment, it immediately makes no sense. And so it's looking for the device that will continue to do that job for years to come, and what kind of support there is in place for that device over those coming years, whether there's battery replacements available that don't require it being sent back to a warehouse and then back out to site, because the cost of a truck roll, again, immediately pulls that business case down another couple of notches, and it might not start making sense if you're having to return to site and changing batteries every year or so. And then I think it's about what I touched on earlier is, okay, you've got the hardware nailed, it meets all the specifications of your use case, but then that data has to go somewhere and it needs to be doing something useful when it goes there. So is it another cloud platform that you can't integrate into anything that's going to be a standalone that a junior engineer is going to need to manage and oversee? Or is it something that can completely integrate into your existing systems, leveraging, all your existing infrastructure and work orders that have been put in place when alarms are driving different business units to go and action something? And so it's about that whole stack, and it's a lot to think about. I guess behind all that is also then the connectivity piece and how that data is actually getting there, who's paying for that. And so managing that entire stack of the solution is why you choose one vendor over another. And I think what we're seeing in market is that a lot of the tenders that we're seeing coming out, a lot of the kind of RFPs and things that are in the market are all really maturing to that level where businesses are really evaluating all of these details in really high levels of scrutiny. Because I think in the last decade, we've seen a lot of IoT projects rise and fall because they've been really quickly adopted to try and solve a problem, but then none of that other stuff was thought about. And so these, I guess, solutions that seem great from the outset do start to fall over. And so I guess my advice would be to really evaluate all of those different things and how it's going to provide benefit to your business and how easy it is to install. That all has to factor into it. It's a big problem
Oh, it's
that we're trying to solve. Yeah.
That's great advice. That's great insight into the whole dynamics of what you mentioned about the use cases, the quantity you need, that support you have for long-term support, battery, like you mentioned, truck rollout, like you don't have to change the batteries, the infrastructure, the database, the connectivity. It's a lot to think about if for anyone looking at IoT as a potential problem or solution to solve a problem. That's great.
I think you're definitely right that the industry is maturing and asking the right questions. I think tender documentation is becoming more aware of some of the risks of of deploying IoT devices at scale, whether that's over the air updates or battery replacements. They're kind of been burned maybe in the past. And so they're definitely more clued up to some of the pitfalls. We're definitely seeing that as a as part of the journey of IoT. And manufacturers are actually, responding to those questions. They're being innovative with their product development. They're putting devices into deep sleep mode for longevity of those devices. So it's really interesting to be in this kind of industry at this time because all these devices are really maturing now in the marketplace.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of what we're seeing is as a manufacturer is decisions we're making on a daily basis with how we're designing and building our products down to, having PCBs manufactured in-house now in Brisbane. A lot of the decisions we're making are putting our products at kind of the forefront of what it means to be an IoT product globally. And so kind of being in this business is really exciting because we're doing a lot of things that haven't been done before in this space and trying to kind of think about those problems and take that feedback and I guess the pain points from customers and solve them because we have the ability to, which is really cool to be a part of a business where we're actually taking feedback on live from either our customers or what we're seeing in the industry and trends, and like you said, seeing those tender responses kind of mature and go deeper and deeper and kind of you can read between the lines and see where someone's been burnt. uh, we're able to respond to that really quickly, which is it's cool, and it's an awesome part of my job, kind of taking those learnings and insights and what we're actually developing and manufacturing from our offices and then go and meet with customers and talk them through it, see them experience turning it on for the first time, and that experience of kind of having the robot come to your house and kind of map itself and put itself to sleep and clean itself. It's that whole experience of kind of watching that user journey with that products, which is really cool.
With in that space, I'm thinking about a global market and making the product to suit many applications. One of the, I suppose, strongest infrastructures required for IoT is that wireless connectivity, whether it be through Wi-Fi or 4G or whatever other technology exists for that remote wireless communication or infrastructure to make IoT play. When you go and think about globally, and I'm probably going back here to your experience as a wireless engineer, running those teams and running WAPs or wireless access points at schools, and what are the challenges it face now around that, around the wireless infrastructure for IoT, locally and globally?
Yeah, I think in terms of IoT, from my understanding, there's been a real shift away from potentially like self-contained networks and having to have a gateway and having lots of cheap sensors reporting into that one gateway because there's a lot of cost, like setting up that infrastructure and having to manage a wireless network if you're a water utility is such a complex thing to overcome, and we've seen councils adopt that here in Australia, but also globally, which is great, and it's allowing kind of them to have a whole bunch of vendors leveraging that lower cost technology to feed a whole bunch of data points in. But we've seen heaps of problems arising from, I guess, the security of those assets and how a utility or a council or even a large business is having to manage those wireless networks and threats or vulnerabilities that they've created. And so really what we believe at Caliper and as a business is that kind of those cellular networks that have already been set up, that are already being managed by, very large corporations with whole teams of people dedicated to securing that infrastructure makes a lot more sense for us. And it also means that we can deploy these technologies globally, knowing that, you've got reputable vendors supplying those networks in multiple regions. Whereas, I guess Wi-Fi, like you mentioned, or Bluetooth, both are great, but really localized. And also, what we need to be really mindful of is the power consumption of our devices. We want these to be deployed in harsh environments for years, and leveraging a technology like Wi-Fi means that we're going to be expending a lot more power just connecting. So, that life expectancy shortens, and it means that we can't support the use cases that we want to. So, uh, supporting our devices on cellular makes a lot of sense. And with kind of the narrowband wide area, it means that we get a lot of reach and a lot of connectivity, even in places where, your phone doesn't connect. So right in the outskirts of the outback of Australia, we're getting connectivity, or down in sewer pits, in a concrete bunker with a steel lid, we still get connectivity. So for those reasons, that's what we've gone for. There is a gap with that where we're out in the bush and there's just literally no coverage, and that's where non-terrestrial connectivity comes into play, and we have to be conscious and kind of leveraging satellite connectivity options where there just is no other option. But for the most part, those cellular networks have been kind of put in place for a reason, and they're being maintained for a reason, and IoT isn't going anywhere, and it's already been written into a whole bunch of standards to be supported for years to come on newer technologies on those cellular networks. So it's certainly a staple of the industry now, and we're pretty confident that that level of security and support from those vendors is exactly what we need.
Definitely, challenges around connectivity, especially regional areas. The diversity of the connectivity portfolio is kind of, you know, balancing out that public infrastructure versus private infrastructure. And, users of IoT definitely have to weigh up the cost benefits of standing up their own infrastructure, managing access, security, all those different portions of that connectivity piece. If you can leverage, infrastructure that is publicly available but securely, you can leverage the very best of IoT. So it's kind of it's an interesting conversation that end users have to have with their bank managers to basically say, is it a go or no go type scenario as well.
Yeah. I mean, if it was me, I just wouldn't want the headache. Like, I
Yeah, it's
wouldn't wanna be
management,
worrying about a problem and then also creating a new one of how do I now manage a wireless network, when technology is on the market, not just us, but other vendors that, leverage those cellular connectivity options. It just, yeah, makes more sense to me.
There's definitely a feeling about sometimes about owning the data or keeping the data within a certain control, and I think that's getting less and less important. In the days gone by, radio networks were pretty common across most capital cities that were infrastructure for water, but that's slowly changing. Like you're saying, the infrastructure provided today by the telcos and non-terrestrials are really opening up the options for people to really take advantage. And the security layer, I imagine, is at different levels within your device, obviously, as a manufacturer, with your certification process you need to conform to the infrastructure as well. All that plays part of the I suppose of the solution that now is more commonly available.
Absolutely. And I think like you mentioned, the industry is changing, and I think because these technologies are more widely adopted now, the reliance or I guess that rubber stamp saying it has to be on-prem and we need the hardware with us to ensure that it's secure, I don't think that's true. I think there's still very secure network options for you, even though it may be hosted somewhere else. I understand, there's mission critical requirements and it means that businesses do need on-prem solutions, but hybrid options or all on cloud options still, yeah, makes sense. Makes sense for the wider population, I think.
Even in the resiliency piece of connectivity, right? We always like it seems like hardware vendors are, approaching it with, okay, we can do connectivity A, but if connectivity A fails, then we fail over to connectivity B. And cellular kind of fits into that portion as well. So you can have localized wireless infrastructure, but should that go down, we can connect to 4G networks or 5G networks or wherever your coverage is as well. So there's that flexibility of connectivity as well for end users who are looking for that resiliency within those networks.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, it's it's not surprising to any of us when a cell tower goes down or connectivity does drop for an hour or a day or a week. But I guess when we're leveraging that network, I have a lot of confidence that it's not just alarm bells ring for us, it's alarm bells ring for a really large business trying to sort out their own problems. And so, ensuring that our hardware is gonna continue to operate and store that data and get that back to the customer when they need it, even in those events. It's not something that we're shocked by and that we have to design for because it's just a part of life.
Yeah. It's like the connectivity was the latest addition to the functionality of the particular sensor that you're using, right? Uh, I guess we're always on our learning journey. We're, you know, trying to find out what the latest thing is or what's new for you. What are you learning? What are you focusing on as you keep going?
Yeah, it's an interesting one because a lot of the new things I'm learning are all being developed by our team. So, uh, you know, even down to, one of our engineers being really excited about having one of the LEDs on our device be able to shine blue with hardware, not with software driving that. So, kind of understanding those things. But I think generally speaking, uh, what I'm learning is just it's probably a boring general answer, but it's how to solve these problems with technology. I think what I really like focusing on is how are we leveraging what we manufacture with things that are also available in the market to go and collect data and generate insights and alerts and alarms for these customers that have really big problems. And for me in my role, that looks like working with industrial designers to manufacture and design brackets that suit our products, but also the customer's existing infrastructure, so it kind of seamlessly melds together. It looks like understanding, I guess, customer requirements and learning about different environments and sites and what they entail and what that means for our devices and products and solutions that have to meet those different requirements. Like just for our an application we've done recently with the back colonies, we had to ensure that that device was going to withstand ant colonies being built inside of those housings. And we had to do signal tests out in the bush because there's such dense forest area that, the customer was questioning whether that we would connect at all. So, understanding, I guess, how a cell network operates in dense, deep bushland and still gets connectivity is something I'm learning about. Uh, so, like, what I'm learning about is so weirdly unique and niche to what I'm doing, but it's so much about the industry and I guess the environmental factors and the customer issues around us, and kind of trying to hone my skill of identifying where a customer may be struggling with something and then how we can go and solve that quickly, scalably, repeatably, rather than having to do multiple trials and drawn out POCs where you see varied success. I think it's trying to, for me personally, it's honing that skill of okay, a customer has a problem. like just today, there's a customer we've got which manages a grain silo facility, and they've been getting fines because of how the dust has been kind of carried in on windy days to kind of environmental areas around that site. And so looking at their site, looking at their requirements, looking at how frequently we need to be monitoring, trying to learn as much as I can about this application to ensure that if we go and solve for this problem, is it the right solution? And is it going to be a solution that withstands the test of time? And in 5 years' time, it's still doing exactly what we said it would do. So it's really trying to learn about how technology is withstanding these environments and what we can do to help protect it with, brackets that don't cause stress on X, Y, or Z, or sensors that have a particular range or accuracy over the full life of the sensor, and uh, it's bits and pieces like that. It's just going really deep into this environmental impact space and making sure that when we do solve a problem, it solves it for the next 5, 10 years without any hiccups. So I guess it's not really applicable to anyone else but me. But it's really, yeah, trying to, yeah, just get better at my job and make sure that when we're providing a solution, it's awesome.
Brilliant.
We're all trying to do that, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah, if you zoom out far enough, that's what we're all trying to do.
Yeah. It's definitely something that, I can tell that you've got a passion for, right? And really, you know, and I can see that the storytelling portion is really a key part of that. And like understanding the customer's problem is one thing, but being able to convey the value that you bring during, for a particular product, for a particular scenario, how we can solve that solution, that's a really key skill that you need to develop, as well as part of any sort of support type of mechanism or customer service position. It's just that understanding, that storytelling, that portion is really key as well. So I can see that you do that really well.
It's nice to hear.
Um,
Yeah.
I guess as we kind of wind up the podcast today, I know is there any final thoughts or to round this out?
Uh, I think ultimately, like technology is moving so fast, and in this space, it's developing so quickly that I'm sure there's a lot of people out there with titles and roles and positions in businesses that don't really understand what's out there and what's capable. And so I think it's just about being interested in how solving problems has changed and how technology is available on the market to adapt to those problems more quickly, more reliably, more efficiently and effectively. And so I think it's being curious and just trying to navigate this space of technology to see how you can solve a problem, whether it's with Caliper or not. I just think there's so much space for technology to go and solve problems and make the world a better place. I mean, as grandeur as that sounds, I mean, just simply identifying a leak with technology means that you can save water, and certainly in Australia, we're not unaware of kind of drought conditions that can occur and how precious water can be. So, it's a small piece of technology that actually has an impact on the world, which is really nice. So if there's a problem out there that is just the bane of your existence and it's keeping you up at night, you have no idea how to solve it, it's very likely there's an IoT solution out there for you. So it might be worth investigating.
Well, on that, like, how can people get in touch with you?
Me personally, LinkedIn, but caliper.com is where you'll find us. You can see lots of information about what we do, the customers we work with, the solutions we have in market, the products we manufacture here in Brisbane. Yeah, caliper.com.
Perfect. Alex, this has been a real pleasure. I would encourage all our listeners, obviously, to look for Alex on LinkedIn. He's got lots of video posts he puts up, interesting posts, which is always a good way to learn. I've really enjoyed the journey, Alex, that you've been on through your wanting to be a teacher, through the trade, through learning new skills. And I think we're all on that journey, Phil. Everyone us learning new skills, and especially hearing from industry experts who've gone down that journey like you, Alex, and really listen to the customers and really put what seems to be sometimes complex ideas in simple. So I want to thank you for that. Really appreciate your time for us today, and wishing you all the best in your journey, and looking forward to more of your posts.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Appreciate you having me.
And for everyone that's listening on our podcast, please don't hesitate to like and subscribe to anything on YouTube, on Spotify. Those ratings really help us out. So we'll see you on the next episode.